So the hype surrounding coronavirus is a little bit too much, right? There's no doubt that this virus poses a risk to people in certain situations, but the idea that the rest of us that we're panic buying toilet paper is absurd to me, right? If this virus is going to wipe out the country, we should be doing things other than just stockpiling toilet paper. But that's a different topic entirely. But as I said, the coronavirus does pose a risk to people in certain situations. So the CDC and the World Health Organization do say that people who are over the age of 60 are at particular risk. This virus tends to kill people and cause complications in older patients. It also poses a risk to people with other pre-existing conditions like heart disease, diabetes, or other immunodeficiencies that they might be suffering from. So that really got us thinking, what about Congress? How many people in Congress fall under these at-risk categories? And we thought it might be a few, but we were shocked to see just how many members of Congress are considered at risk for complications and even fatalities if they contract the coronavirus. So we put out this article, and as it says, the average age in the House of Representatives is 57.6 years old, and the average age in the Senate, the mean age is 62.9. So those are high, considering that over 60 is considered at risk and should really take care to make sure that they don't contract the disease. That's a pretty big deal. So then we started going through and say, okay, what about, can we name them all? That's a lot of people to name when the average age in Congress is that high. So we figured, let's go through the leadership and the committee chairs just to see what we'd be looking at if coronavirus actually made its way through Capitol Hill and these people started going to the hospital and, God forbid, maybe even develop serious complications. So we start going through the list, and it's shocking. It's shocking just how many people in leadership are considered at risk if they contract this disease. So let's go down the list. Obviously, we have Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Patrick Leahy. He is up there in age 79. Chuck Grassley is 86. Lamar Alexander, he's retiring, but he chairs the Senate Committee on Health. He's 79 years old. You have Steny Hoyer, the House Majority Leader. Lindsey Graham, the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. John Lewis is being treated for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So in a lot of ways, he's considered to be extra at risk because not only is he 80 years old, but he is receiving treatment that will make his immune system weaker. So he's at risk. Dan Lipinski, now this one's interesting. He is not in the leadership and he is not a chair of any committees, but he's one of the two Congress representatives who publicly say that they are type 1 diabetics. And the CDC says type 1 diabetics are particularly at risk for complications, potentially even fatal ones if they contract the disease. So he's one. Kim Schreier is another one, another member of Congress who is diabetic. You have Jerry Nadler. He's 72. Maxine Waters is 81. Lisa Murkowski is 62. She's just over that threshold. Jim Clyburn, the House Majority Whip, is 79 years old. Frank Pallone is 68. Eddie Bernice Johnson is 84. John Barrasso, 67. Keep going down the list. John Risch, Elliot Engel, Pat Roberts, Colin Peterson, Ron Johnson, Richard Shelby. We went through this list, and we'll leave the article link in the description. We went through this list, and what is clear is it's easier to find committee chairmen who are not over 60 years old than it is to list all of them who are. Why is this important? If the coronavirus spreads to the House of Representatives and the Senate, and these chambers are either forced to shut down, close, or people actually start getting hospitalized, this will grind Congress to a halt. Now, usually I like to joke that Congress not doing anything is a good thing because that means they're not violating our rights, they're not passing ridiculous, bogus bills. But in a crisis, when you're talking about responding to the coronavirus, we need a functioning Congress. We need a functioning government. This is just Congress. This doesn't even mention the Supreme Court justices, who are almost all at risk, considered to be at risk because of their health conditions and their age. If Congress was to shut down, and God forbid these members of Congress were hospitalized or even killed by the virus, it would be impossible to get things done. Now, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with their policies or not, there's no debating the fact that these people on this list know how to get things done. They understand the House and Senate rules, they understand the legislative process, and they understand how to get bills turned into law. If we were to lose them, whether they're incapacitated, hospitalized, or, God forbid, killed, there aren't people just waiting in the wings who have that knowledge, have that experience, who could just take over on day one and be able to get things done. It would be complete chaos, right? For all of Nancy Pelosi's faults, she understands the House rules, and she understands how to get bills passed. She knows how to whip up votes. In a situation where we were to lose these people, either temporarily or permanently, the House and the Senate would not be able to function. Which, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest arguments for term limits, right? When you have people who chair the committees on health and they're considered at risk for this disease, God forbid they're no longer able to do their duties, there aren't people just waiting in the wings who can take over those committees to approve the legislation we would need to fight this virus, to respond to this virus. And that's terrifying. So as I said, this is probably one of the biggest and best reasons to promote term limits. Now, I understand the problems with term limits, and that it's terrifying to think about a Republican, say, term limited, no longer forced to answer to their constituents. They'd be able to basically do whatever they want. And we see that when Republicans are term limited, or when the Republicans are retiring, they tend to move more to the left because they don't have to answer to their voters. They're not afraid of pissing off their constituents. So I understand that. But when we have people in their 80s, I mean, we have people in their mid to upper 80s, mid 86, 85, 86, who are in charge of committees, and they would be responsible for approving the legislation we would need to respond to this kind of viral outbreak. That's terrifying. So yes, this is probably, if not a case for term limits themselves, like mandatory term limits, there's a case to be made that we should not be electing people in their 80s to Congress. Now, I love octogenarians. I think that they are hilarious. A lot of them are hilarious. They've lots of wisdom to impart. But they're not the most physically fit, physically able people. And in a situation like this, where we're dealing with a virus that kills the elderly, a disproportionate amount of fatalities are with elderly people, you do not want to be relying on them to save us. I mean, the same thing goes with Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. They are both considered at risk. Trump as well. As I said, the Supreme Court justice. So, I mean, this is something that isn't really being covered a lot. I know that Nancy Pelosi has pushed back on the idea of closing Congress. Some people are pushing legislation to allow members of Congress to vote from their home districts if Congress is forced to close down. That's been kind of bounced around a lot. Right now, it doesn't seem like Congress is going to close. But if that happens, and if they need to start closing down, stopping people from coming in, or just suspending activities in the Capitol building completely, it's going to get really, really anxious, right? Congress is not going to be able to respond to this in the way that we'd want to see. So I hope that none of these people get the virus. I hope that they all are able to stay safe, and that we're able to prevent members of Congress and their staff from spreading this disease. But it is an important thing to think about, because ultimately these people are supposed to be representing us. And in a situation like this, age becomes a factor. I don't want to be ageist. I don't want to piss off liberals and be ageist. But this is just another reason to support either term limits, or just to support the idea that maybe we shouldn't be electing 80-year-olds to members of Congress over and over again. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And let me know if you think that this is a legitimate fear. Is it ridiculous to publish this list, or is this something that we need to talk about? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll read them and respond as they come in.